In the first two videos, we learned a variety of things. We learned about how to get a program that could allow you to type HTML. We learned that a folder is a website and that a text file is a web page. We learned about the basic structure of a web page, about the head and the body. We learned about tags with the angled brackets, the command, the attribute, and the value. We also learned in the second video about white space characters. We reviewed the basic structure, and we learned about how to add the break between lines or to use block elements to break up lines. Block elements including the P, the H1 through H6, and the block quote tags. These are all block elements that would create a space above and a space below those elements. We also learned about inline elements like the B or strong, I or italic. So now we're going to do a little bit more review. We're going to practice the basic structure again, and we're going to learn a few more new things. So once again, I'm going to open up Notepad++, and I'm going to make a new document. And let's take a look at that basic page structure again. Don't forget, set the language to HTML. And let's begin. Now remember, the very first tag you put, can you remember what it is? It's the exclamation point doc type. Then you put HTML after that. Now from here, we do the nested tags, the tags that are inside other tags. So we begin with, again, do you remember? The HTML tag. That'll have lang equals ing. That means that the language of the web page will be English. Going to hit return many times. Well, let's just do it a few times here. And then end the HTML tag. Once again, the end tag begins with a slash, and it does not include the attribute or the value. Inside here we have two basic parts of the structure. If you remember, the top part and the bottom part. Can you remember what those were? They are the head and the body. So I'm going to create the head here, and then we're going to have the body here. It's going to create the end of the body. There we go. Now in the head, I told you about a tag where you can make a title for the web page. So in the browser, in the title bar, it'll show up there. That's the title tag. And inside there we can put the title. This will be the third page that we're making right now. And let's end the title. Let me introduce to you one other thing you can put in the head. There's actually many things, but one of the things you can put in the head is something called a meta tag. Meta basically is a word that means about something. And one meta tag allows us to declare what kind of text encoding is being used. So after the meta tag, I'm going to need an attribute and a value. And the attribute is going to be char set. That means character set, or what kind of text encoding will we use for this document. And I'm going to put the equal, then quotes, and UTF-8. UTF-8 is a very common form of text encoding. Most pages on the World Wide Web have UTF-8 encoding. This allows you to make not only English language text, but also Japanese and many other languages as well. If you don't have this, Japanese will not show up. I'll show you how that works in just a minute. All right, now let's go into the body, and let's create several lines in the body. So now we can add some things here. Now remember we learned about heading, so I'm going to make a header, an H1, that's going to be the biggest type. And inside that, I'm going to put the title of the page. So page number 3. You can put any title you want. And then below that, I'm going to put some, maybe a subtitle. Let's try a subtitle. We're doing H2. and this will be, I don't know, my third page. It can be really anything you want. This is just practicing the tags that we learned before. Let me zoom out just a little bit here. Then below that, let's have some text. Let's have a P tag in a paragraph. And inside the paragraph, we can put really any text we want. So I will put any text I want. And I'm going to use some inline tags like EM for the italics, any text, end the EM, that I want to. There we go. So there's my paragraph. I could put more, but this is just an example. All right. Now, we also learned about the block quote. So sometimes the block quote is used to introduce actually a quote. So I'm going to say, I'm going to try to give a famous quote. One famous quote, colon, and then I'm going to make a new tag, and the new tag will hold the block quote. And that will be that computers do what you tell them to do. Now I'm going to put a break here because I don't want to have a paragraph break, but I want to have the next text come out on the next line. So I'm going to put a BR here. And then computers do what you tell them to do, not what you want them to do. And that's the quote. So I'm going to end that by ending the block quote. And so there we have our web page. All right, so we've used here many of the commands, many of the tags that we've learned before. I'm going to save this. Again, I'm going to put it in the website folder. And again, you can give it any name you want to. I can call this, for example, parsley, if I want, if I can spell that correctly. And I can save it, and parsley.html will be the name of the file. I can go back into the window. We can see parsley.html here, and if I open it up, then this is what it looks like. Here's the H1 title, the H2 title, here is the paragraph text with the italics, and here is the block quote with the BR at the end of that first part. So that's the page that we just created. All right, so in this page we're using almost all the things we learned about before. We are using the doc type, the HTML tag, the head and the body. We've got a title. We've got something new, the meta tag, and there's various kinds of meta tags. This is just the most common one. We've got block elements like H1, H2, and P, and block quote, and we've got inline elements like EM. BR, by the way, is considered not to be either an inline or a block element. It's not block, but it's not exactly inline either. All right, so those are things that we've learned mostly before. So what I'd like to do now is introduce a couple of new things that we haven't seen before. So I'm going to make some space below the block quote, and we're going to make a list now. So let's say you want a list of different things. I'm going to have maybe several different computer parts, let's say. So I'm going to want to make a list. Now there's two kinds of lists. I can have what's called an ordered list, OL, and an ordered list is a numbered list. It'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or I could have UL for an unordered list. That's just bullets. It's a bullet list. I'm going to begin with the unordered list, and then we can change it later on. And now, well, let me make actually the end of the UL tag. So that just tells the computer we have a bullet list. But now we have to make each one of the bullets. Each one of the bullets requires another tag called LI. The LI tag means list item. So if this is parts of a computer, we might have, for example, the CPU, and that's going to be one list item. So we have the beginning list item and the end list item. Then let's have another one, list item, and let's say RAM memory. There's another list item. Now I could keep on doing this, but I like to cheat actually wherever I can and avoid doing more work. So I'm just going to copy one line of text there, and then I'm going to paste it. And so now I have several list items, and now I can just select what's inside one of them and type in something new, like the motherboard, maybe, let's see, the hard disk drive, the optical drive, not the DIV, but the drive, sorry, and let's say the case. There we have it. So this is an unordered list with 6 different points. So I'm going to save this. I just did a Control S. And now I'm going to take a look at the page in a browser. I'm going to hit the F5 key, and there we have our unordered list. You can see that those are bullet points. So the UL, the unordered list, looks like that. Now, I mentioned before we have something called the OL. So if I type OL, and if I change the ending to end OL, now I've just completely changed it into a numbered list or an ordered list. So I can save that. The LI is the same for the unordered or the ordered list. Go back over here, F5. Now you can see it's a numbered list. The numbers are put in automatically. You don't have to type the numbers. All you have to do is type the list items, which is kind of nice. Because, for example, let's say if I want to switch one of these things, maybe I can put the hard disk drive earlier in the list. So I'm going to try putting it there. So I just put the hard disk drive up higher. I just saved it. And now if we reload the page, the hard disk drive is number 2, and now RAM is 3 and the motherboard is 4. So it automatically keeps the right numbering system. So there are a couple different ways we can do this. With an ordered list, you can actually have different kinds of lists. My list right here is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but by adding an attribute called type, I can make several different kinds of ordered lists. For example, if I say type equals A, like that, then this list will go A, B, C, D, E, F, and probably that's it. So I'm going to F5, and there we go, A, B, C, D, E, F. I can change that type from the letter A to maybe Roman numeral 1. And this will have Roman numerals instead of letters. So I go over here, do an F5, and now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in Roman numerals. So there's various ways to get a list, ordered list or unordered list. If I do the unordered list, then it's back to a bullet point, but I can also change this to, let's say, circle. And let's see what that does. Go back over here. And now you can see instead of black bullet points, I've got hollow or white bullet points. So there's a lot of different styling you can do just with simple HTML. So that is a list. A list, by the way, is a block item. It's a block element, which means that if you have typing before the UL and after the UL, it will be divided. So whenever you have the UL or the OL, it'll make a space on top and a space on bottom, and it'll break the lines in both places. So that's a block element. A block element. Another kind of thing that can be kind of fun is something called an entity. And I'm going to create a paragraph right here. And inside the paragraph, we're going to make a couple of entities. So maybe I'll say this page and that are copyright Luis Poza, and maybe put just a period after that. So the ampersand right here, actually, it's not a very good way to type an ampersand. this ampersand actually is used as code in some places. So if you put the ampersand, there's a danger that this and mark is going to appear strange. So there's a way that we can get around that, and actually it uses the ampersand. I'm going to put an ampersand, and then AMP, and then a semicolon. Now, notice it just went italic here, but the ampersand and colon are the beginning and ending of what we call HTML entities. If I want to do the copyright, then I would do it similarly. I do an ampersand, copy, and then a semicolon. So this will create an ampersand, this will create a copyright sign. So if I save this, and we take a look at the web page, we can see the and mark and the copyright mark. So once again, whenever you're trying to create some kind of special sign, you can use the ampersand at the beginning, the colon at the back, and then put something else in there. For example, if I want to do the yen sign, just typing the yen sign would be a little bit, not very good. It would maybe appear, maybe not appear. But if I said it cost 100 yen, not cast, excuse me, cost, I can make the yen sign with an ampersand, yen, and a semicolon, and then 100. So that ampersand yen, that'll become an entity, and that'll be a yen sign. There we go. There's the yen sign. So begin with an ampersand, that is on an English keyboard, Shift 7, and then end with a semicolon. And you can't just put anything. You have to know the specific codes for all of these, but there are thousands of different codes. Thousands of different codes. We'll do a little bit more of this later, but that's the basic idea. Ampersand, then the code, and then a semicolon. So that's an entity, a Unicode entity. All right, so I'm going to just have a few more things before we go. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to two very general tags, which are very important in next week's lesson. The first one is called div. Div is a tag used as a block element. Div is a block element, but it's a very general one. It doesn't do anything in particular. If I say hello world inside this block element, and let me put text before and text after, then the div will break it up. It won't indent. It won't make it big or bold or anything like that. Div is actually a little similar to the p tag. It just creates a division between the lines before and the lines after. So if I save this, then go back to our page here and reload, you can see here's the text before and here's the text after. Now the p tag will create a little space above and below, as will the h1 or h2 tags. The block quote will indent. The div doesn't do anything. The div is only a block tag. It only creates a break before and a break after. That's all that it does. Now, why do we need that? Well, the answer, because after all, we could do this with a BR tag. We could put a BR here and a BR here, and it would be the same thing. But the div is actually very important when we begin to learn CSS coding later on. Now, there's another tag which is for inline, and that's the span tag. So if I put span before and after here, this is inline. So text before, hello world, text after will all appear as one line. So I'm going to save that, and we're going to take a look at it. F5, and now you can see all of this is one line. Here's the beginning span, here's the end span. Again, span doesn't do any styling. Just by itself, both div and span change really nothing. It's just a block element and an inline element. So the reason we have div and span is because we just want a blank block and a blank inline element so that when we learn CSS, we can just add the CSS to the div, and we can add the CSS to the span, and we can do a lot of powerful things with that. So just remember right now that span is inline and div is block. They don't do anything by themselves, but you can add things to these which really make them important later on in next week's lessons. All right, now one more thing before we finish, and that's going to be a link. We're going to learn how to make a link. So I'm going to create a paragraph here, and we're going to put some text in the paragraph. And I'm going to want to make a link to the second page that we made. So let's go and visit the second page. It's fun. So there's our text. Now I want the second page to be a link, and I want that link to lead to the second page. Now the link tag is actually fairly simple. It's the letter A. We start the letter A and we finish the letter A. Now, of course, it's not just that. Just doing this will not make it do anything. That just says we're going to put a link in here. You need to actually tell the computer where the link will lead to. Now, if it's in the same folder as these ones are, this is the page we're working on right now, we want to link to this page. So this is page2.html. So we need to put that in an attribute in the A tag. So in the A tag, I'm going to type a href equals, so the href is the attribute. It says the hyperlink reference. And inside here, we're going to put the address of the second page, which is page2.html. Here's where knowing about the file name extension is important. If we just put page 2, it wouldn't work. We have to add the file name extension, and if we can't see that, it's kind of hard to know what to put in the link. So there's my text. Let's go and visit link, the second page, close link. It's fun. So I'm going to save that, and we're going to go back here, and I'm going to reload, and there we go. Here's the link to the second page, and you'll notice if I click it, we go to the second page. So that's a link. We're going to learn more about links in the next lesson, but that's all for today. These are 3 lessons, and you've learned quite a bit. We started out with nothing. We started out knowing nothing about web pages, but we learned how to get the program to make web pages. That's the Notepad++ app. We learned about the basic structure of a web page. We learned about various tags, including tags for structure, HTML, head, and body. We learned about some information tags like title and meta. We learned about block elements such as P, block quote, H1 through H6, UL, and OL. We learned about some inline tags such as I, EM, B, and strong, as well as the link, which is an inline tag, that's A. And we learned about some attributes and values, type equals circle, or href equals page2.html. So we learned quite a bit in just a short period of time. Once again, I want you to practice this. Watch the video again, pause when I tell you to do something, create your own page, try it 2 or 3 times until you get used to it. After watching these 3 videos, hopefully you will have practiced making perhaps as many as a dozen different web pages. I want you to practice and practice and practice until you get used to making all of this code. It's important that you know this, not only for the test, but also because it is important later on when you're making web pages, of course. All right, and that's it for today.